So today's video is going to be kind of tough for me. It's not really a topic that I choose to talk about. Okay. I've put a lot of thought into this video on how I'm going to discuss emotional abuse and how the gospel principles enable you and teach you to become a codependent person because of the way that you view them. That was a mouthful. This is not a fun topic to talk about because there are so many people involved in emotional abuse and don't even know it. It's not easy to say that I was someone who was emotionally abused. It's not easy to admit that I didn't see the signs that everybody told me about after I was out of the situation. I am grateful that I was able to get out in a timely manner of an emotional abusive relationship so that I wasn't fully broken. There are a lot of people out there who suffer from a lot of triggers, postpartum depression, PTSD, a lot of anxiety, and have a hard time functioning because they were in such an abusive relationship. Emotional abuse teaches the person who is being abused that they are unworthy and that they are not respectable in the sight of other people around them, and that they're not good enough in any sense of life. I always viewed myself as someone who had confidence and was very independent and wouldn't let certain things in my life affect me. If you knew me on my mission or knew me before my mission, I was someone who was very vibrant and loved life and was very excited to help people around me. And I'm twiddling my thumbs here because this is not an easy topic for me. There are triggers involved and there are hurt feelings and experiences that have been involved. I told you guys that I was going to be as raw as I possibly can. I do not hope to divulge certain experiences that I had in hopes to making other people feel bad. It is not my job in this video to make the perpetrator or the victim look good or bad. It is my job to empower you and to help you find grace and upliftment and understanding that the gospel principles teach us how not to be abused. I want to start off with forgiveness. Forgiveness is something that we are taught in the gospel to forgive 70 times 7. That's what the Savior taught. So to forgive 70 times 7, how I interpreted it and how you might interpret it is that no matter how badly you've been treated, you need to forgive that person and love them. Now, that may be true, that we are to forgive and to love. But remember that loving yourself comes first. Being in an emotional abusive relationship and having low self-esteem and not feeling good enough teaches us and taught me that forgiveness meant that I needed to forgive people no matter how badly they treated me, and to continue to forgive them as they continued to mistreat me. My case was a little bit different because the apologies were endless and the sincerity was an empty bucket. I always had apologies given to me in my emotional abuse relationship, and it made me feel like I had to say sorry in return, when in reality that there was nothing that I had done to say sorry for. In an emotional abusive relationship, the perpetrator will take forgiveness and make you feel like you are the person that needs to be forgiven. So if you begin to view yourself as someone who is always doing wrong and always feeling like someone needs to forgive you, I want you to be your own agent and to guide yourself in understanding if you actually need to apologize, if you have done no wrong, then have confidence in who you are, that the person who's making you feel that way needs to readjust how they feel about themselves. That is not your job nor your responsibility to make them feel better when they've done you wrong. It always ended up being my job to making others feel good about themselves and making myself feel bad about myself, because for some reason it was my fault for making other people feel bad. Once I learned that I was a codependent person and I felt responsible for the feelings around me, I was then able to understand that feeling other people's feelings and then feeling responsible for them is not my job. It's not my job or your job to make anybody feel good about themselves, especially when it gets to the point where they feel like they can't feel good about themselves unless you feed them positivity and upliftment. Positivity and upliftment is something that needs to really come within. That doesn't mean that you can't give someone a compliment, but that means that you don't need someone to give you a compliment. Let's bring it roundabout back again to forgiveness. There are two things that I want you to learn here. First one being that if someone is always making you feel like you need to forgive them 70 times 7 and that they can continue to treat you the way that they do, then there may be an unhealthy cycle there. Number two is someone making you feel like you always need to apologize for your actions, thoughts, opinions, or deeds. If you feel like you don't need to apologize because you feel like you've done nothing wrong, but yet apologize to lessen the situation, then there might be an unhealthy pattern there. Oh. Okay, I can do this. The next one that I want to talk about, the second principle that I want to talk about is something that the Savior taught on the Sermon on the Mount. That is very specific because in the law of Moses and the law of the Pharisees and Sadducees followed, there was the law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, meaning that justice needed to be served. So if someone punched you in the face, you had every right to punch them back. So the Savior came back on the Sermon on the Mount and said, actually, we need to do more grace than we have justice. So I'm going to place in a principle of give up thy cloak and turn the other cheek. So I'm explaining what I meant, what I felt like this meant, and then what I've actually learned it really means. What I felt like turn the other cheek meant was kind of in the same pattern as the forgiveness, that if someone slapped me in the face or hurt me emotionally or physically, it was my job to be the bigger and the better person and turn around and walk away. Well, that created a pattern in my life where it was always turning around, saying you're sorry, or getting endless apologies, and then letting the pattern continue, where I was continually letting someone slap me in the face, and because I wanted to be the better person and the bigger person, I would just let them treat me that way. Since I have freed myself from my past relationship, I have since gained an empowerment of understanding that turn the other cheek is for the individual. It's not for the person slapping the cheek. Let me explain what that means. The Savior wanted to find a balance between justice and grace, where eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was always about justice, and grace is always about grace. And so I felt like I was kind of always giving the grace, but justice is still there. So taking into account that both of those are a 50-50 thing, turn the other cheek had to do with teaching what the culture meant. And in the Jewish culture, there were levels of how people were viewed. So you had various levels of sociality, and depending on wealth or what kind of line you were born in and how you lived. So turn the other cheek, the Savior was trying to teach us to be on an equal playing field with everybody around us, which means having equal respect for you and equal respect for me. So when someone would slap you in the face, whether it is a metaphor or emotional or physical slap, then you actually needed to turn the other cheek, give them a chance, give them that grace opportunity to see if they're going to do it again. So this is beginning, you're going to start equaling out that playing field between you and the other person. And so I am the person who was slapped, wanted the ability to say, I'm not going to let you treat me that way. We're on equal playing fields. So I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to give you some grace right here to see if you actually will slap me again. And if the person actually slaps you again, then that means that they're not going to treat you equally and they're not going to treat you with respect. So in the scriptures, word for word, it actually says that you will have power to crush their foot. And so I want you to think about what that actually means. That if you've given that chance and turned the other cheek and they did slap you, then you have the opportunity and the ability to complete justice. You tried the grace thing and it didn't work. Justice must be met. That doesn't mean that you're going to treat them the way that they treated you. That just means that now you have a clean slate to be able to walk away and say, I want nothing to do with you. And that doesn't mean I'm being mean. That doesn't mean I'm not forgiving you. And that doesn't mean that I'm not practicing charity. What it means is you're giving yourself the opportunity for forgiveness. You're giving yourself the opportunity to be kind to yourself and giving yourself the opportunity to be charitable to yourself. So when we begin to see a gospel principle like turn the other cheek, we realize that the Savior wasn't taking away an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. What he was trying to do was add to it, which was grace. So you have justice and then you have grace. You mingle it together and that creates an equal respect between two parties. If the person doesn't slap you in the face after you've given them that chance, then that is a hope that they are giving you that equal opportunity in that relationship for mutual respect. This takes practice. This takes time to be able to stand up for yourself and realize that you want to give someone the opportunity to be good by giving them grace, but if they don't give it back in return, as sad and as hard as it is important that you love yourself and that you give yourself the respect that you deserve so that you can actually find happiness. There is no happiness in letting someone slap you back and forth over and over again. Trust me, I've been there, I know, and it's not happiness. Going through my divorce, I've actually gone back and looked at quite a few photos because that's kind of how I process things. I'm also kind of a photo fanatic. But as I went through my pictures, I noticed, and I actually began to know this before my divorce happened, that in my facial expressions, I wasn't really happy. I always thought it was because I was so tired, because I'd get up in the middle of the night with my son and that I would always be the one, gearing and rearing the child and trying to bring money in and put food on the table physically and, with money-wise and to keep a house afloat and to keep a happy marriage alive. So I always thought that I wasn't happy because I was so tired. And I was tired. But emotional abuse really takes a toll on you physically. And I mean, if you asked my former spouse, I was always wanting to sleep. And it's because I was battling this of inside of me of wanting to feel worth, wanting to feel like I'm good enough, and wanting to feel like my marriage is going to survive. But then I realized in these pictures, I wasn't happy and I didn't have energy because of the emotional strain that I had on me in my relationship. I now have the responsibilities of a single mom, of putting food on the table and making money. And I have so much energy. And it amazes me. And anytime I have, because this is an emotional roller coaster, anytime I have an emotional throw or I feel like I'm emotionally been slapped in the face, it literally takes me days physically to get back to where I was. My divorce kind of happened slowly, but also very abruptly. And to the point where I wasn't able to take care of my body physically because of the trauma that I was going through. And I lost quite a bit of weight in just a short amount of time because of how emotionally drained I was of the situation. The reason why I say that is because I want you to be able to be patient with yourself when you're going through this. But I also want you to recognize the signs of being able to find that empowerment and upliftment within yourself again. So if you feel like you don't have enough energy, get the vitamin D first and actually get 8 hours of sleep a night. And if you're still feeling so drained like I was, then maybe readjust and find out what's going on with you emotionally, what's happening inside of your body that is giving you that message. To be in tune with the body that God has given you is so important. But then continue to be patient with yourself and recognizing that you're not going to get energy or find that empowerment overnight. That is something that you have to be dedicated to and working on as an individual process, whether that be going to therapy, whether it be having huge prayer time and applying the atonement into your life, and whether that may be giving some time and giving yourself a break to be able to breathe. Don't expect so much out of yourself that you begin to even be more tired. So that's part 1 of this video. There's going to be a part 2 coming. I have embedded a PDF document below for you to go over the first 2 things that we talked about and how to get that sphere of understanding these relationships and your relationship with yourself, with God, and with others. So there's a great PDF document that goes through a bunch of questions and rearing yourself to finding self-respect and self-happiness, because you're worth it. Because God knows you're worth it. You already have the worth inside of you. You just have to find it.